Quit it. All right, who's doing that? Ah, dun 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 dun. Good morning, Glue Troopers. Well, a couple of things to talk about today. For starters, I want to make a correction from last night. It was Mr. Rains who sent me the machine gun nest, the resin machine gun nest, not Haynes. I didn't have my notes in front of me, obviously, because I literally, as I said last night, I just ran in here and shot it off the top of my head, and then the sound didn't work, and I went back in the house when I saw the sound was, but by the way, it was a dead battery in the little microphone switching unit here, so I put a new battery in, which is why the sound's working fine now. So these little lavalier mics that have the switch on them really tend to gobble up the juice in those batteries. So Mr. Rains, thank you very much for the, I didn't have, the reason I couldn't keep it straight was I brought everything out here to the Tarbis. Here's the package that Sal sent me the steering canopy in, and here's the box that Mr. Rains sent the stuff in. Well, I'd left that here in the Tarbis. When I went back in to edit the video in the house, it was already raining out here and everything, so I didn't want to, just too lazy to come back. When I was saying Haynes, and I was like, that's right, isn't it Haynes? Old man brain, OMB. And actually, it's still raining out here, drizzling. But enough of that. So Sal and Mr. Rains, thanks again. And Mr. Rains, apologies for the inappropriate nom de guerre. Name of war? You know what I mean. For getting your name wrong. Anyway, see, being cool can be tricky. It can backfire very easily. By the way, it was my wife's idea. She goes, why don't you just dub it like the old Japanese movies? And I was like, that is awesome. So we dubbed it. And of course, she did the voiceover in Spanish afterwards. And I know what she said. I was just having some fun. Hey, that's what this channel's about. We get enough misery in the real world. So let's escape for a few minutes. Now, on to today's lesson of disinformation. And I have no idea why I suddenly adopted a French accent. A viewer asked me, what was it that, what model, mold, what actual kit has been produced by the most people? And that was a head scratcher. And I thought it might make a fairly easy, well, not easy, but I figured, okay, that's something I can look into. And I did look into it, and I realized that it's really hard to pin that one down, even using Box Art Den and Scalemates and Henk of Holland and all these others, which are great resources. But there's just you can't keep track of all this stuff. Well, you got to remember you're still talking about the inner workings of a company, and some of which are still in production, and they understandably do not care to chat about their secret inner workings with some backwater blabbermouth on the internet. How could they not want to tell me? So one candidate that I picked, and not because I enjoy talking about it, because I talk about it so much, clearly I do, but because I thought it was genuinely a good candidate, is the original 1963 Aurora Godzilla model. Now, I tend to focus on Aurora Revell monogram a lot because, partly because with Andy as a resource, I get so much great information on Aurora, that, you go where the information takes you. But another reason is that they were one of the early ones in, and just about everybody's built their stuff. Everybody identifies with them, no matter what you think of their kits. Everybody built them. Everybody has an Aurora story. Same probably with Revell and monogram. And You know, it's interesting. I find people talk about Aurora a lot. There's a real, very strong sentiment attached to Aurora, Revell, and Monogram. Not so much seemingly with the Lindbergh line, which would probably be number 4 on the list because it was another big American company. But and I think most will admit Lindbergh often didn't always make the greatest kits. That's about as honestly and delicately as I can put it. So they don't tend to get the love, and understandably, although I understand they made some really good car kits and everything, especially towards the end when they were taken over by George Toteff. But and AMT, of course, has a really strong following because of all the car lovers, and of course MPC also. So, and then of course there's the whole sci-fi thing, AMT and MPC with Star Trek, Star Wars. So that those companies tend to be the bulk of the orbit. When you get into Tamiya and Hasegawa, you know, you're getting to, I guess, what you can call, you know, the more serious, models. I saw a 1/72nd scale Hasegawa. I think it was a World War II fighter. I think it was a Hayabusa. This is 1/72nd scale. If I remember correctly, I think it was $46. The Tamiya 1/48 scale kits aren't that expensive. That little Swiss Messerschmitt they have that's in the white box that seems to be kind of rare is only like $38 or something like that. And I was like, man, come on. I love building models, but 48, 46, something, over $40 for a 1/72nd scale single engine model airplane. Whoo, brother. And maybe they're getting like Edward, you know, who's putting all this metal etch and all these other things into a kit. So I don't know. I just wasn't going to drop that kind of money on it. It's hard for me to enjoy a kit if I know I paid that much for it. You build it in fear of messing it up. So anyway, back to my point. And for all you Hasegawa fans out there, tell me why you think this thing is so expensive, you know, because I am sure as somebody it's worth it. But back to what I was going to talk about. So I picked back to the most produced kit. The candidate I picked to look into is the 1963 Aurora Godzilla kit, because it's changed hands so many times, been produced by several people. It's still in production today through Atlantis. And I believe it's the original mold. So 63 Aurora gets it, 77 Aurora ceases operation, 78 the molds are sent to Monogram. So not including parent companies like Nabisco that bought Aurora, it's still an Aurora kit until it goes to Illinois. Now it's owned by Monogram. Monogram, if I remember correctly, also produced it for a while. And I believe it was the exact same mold, so it should be exact same kit in a different box. So there's 2 people that made it. Not particularly outstanding. Now, when you say the kit that changed hands the most times, it stayed under the Monogram logo, but as we know, Monogram, Revell, that whole story, 7 different owners, Odyssey partners, and so many people owned it. Hallmark and Gearbox Toys, and Hobbyco ended up with it. Then in 2018, Hobbyco goes out of business. Now, let's hold right there for a second. In 2000, Playing Mantis making it under the banner of Aurora in 2000. But in 2018, Hobbyco goes under. Blitz becomes another owner of the molds. Okay. Blitz keeps what they want, does its thing with their stuff, and so on and so forth. And the rest of the stuff, and by the way, I don't think most of these molds never left Illinois. And it says, okay, we don't want the rest of these molds. You guys tell me what, let's put them up for auction. So there's a big battle between all the companies that remake these old kits, and round 2, now there's a round 2, and round 2 winds up getting all of the kits. And then apparently the ones that round 2 doesn't want go up for sale again, and Atlantis gets a bunch of them. And Atlantis gets the Godzilla mold. It wasn't labeled as a Godzilla mold, it was labeled as the Willie's Maze mold, back from when Aurora did their famous athletic sports figures, which apparently didn't sell very well. So when they decided to do Godzilla, they just took the big, I guess it's the frame, the gigantic 1,200-pound steel block. They pull out all the inserts for the Willie Mays figure and put in their ones for the Godzilla figure. But it's still labeled Willie Mays, so you can imagine the surprise over at Atlantis when they open up the Willie Mays mold and there's Godzilla, a infinitely more popular kit. But that brings up the question, what about when Playing Mantis had made the thing 20 years ago? Maybe they just leased the mold, or possibly they had bought it, but since what had been the assets of Playing Mantis, I think ended up at round 2, because I believe they were both Tom Lowe operations. So maybe they had it all along, and when they sold the unwanted kit, the unwanted molds that they had gotten from Blitz, then perhaps they just put that one in there with it. I don't know. The world may never know. But that means that the Godzilla kit has been made by at least 4 genuinely separate companies. Aurora, Monogram, Playing Mantis, labeling it as Aurora, and now Atlantis. And you gotta be careful how I say it. Playing Mantis and then Atlantis. I'm liable to stutter on that and say Playing Lantis. But that's a kit we know that's had 4 distinct manufacturers for this, what I believe is the same mold. There are probably kits out there that have seen more. The Constellation, that was one of the early kits, want to say, I'm gonna have to go look and see who it was that started that kit back in the 50s, which, by the way, was still in production recently. That's been produced under at least 5 different names, and it's been so long since I did the research on this, and that's the same mold, and I think someone still has it today, and it's kind of a viable kit today for a low-cost kit. Again, finding out because a lot of times you have to remember when you say, well, how many people made this kit? It's distinctly possible that the original manufacturer just pulled the mold out and shot them on contract for those people. That the people who had the kit reproduced never actually had their own presses or or never owned the molds. So that it really gets into the weeds, complicated. And of course, every single kit and every single company's got a distinct history. So you're talking about a flow chart that looks like spaghetti thrown on the wall. So it's really, really, really hard to say. But, and I don't think the Godzilla kit is the most, under the most owners. It's just the one I could come up with that seemed like a good place to start. And some of you guys have probably seen kits that you really like that were produced by other people later on, although often different colored plastic. Maybe some of the parts aren't done in chrome. I mean, there's always differences, but it could still be the same molds. So what's your candidate? Question of the day, what's your candidate for the kit that's gone through the most actual, and I think the way he's looking at it is it's gone through the most owners that actually produced it themselves. Okay? So there you go, guys. There's a fun little thought project. And I got family coming over in a bit. Don't know how much I get done today. I did get another coat of paint on the training glider and the V1. It's nice to know that when I come in here just, let's get a little video made. And but then I see the kit sitting there. Well, I'll just do this one little thing. Next thing you know, you're building your model instead of making your video. And I'm glad to know that I come in here, my first inclination is still to build stuff, still fun. Well, guys, take care. We'll talk at you later and model on.